It is a pleasure to be joined by such a distinguished group of guest speakers that agreed to share their insights about the opportunities, challenges, and future direction of enterprise AI globally.
We all know that GPUs and these AI accelerators actually help enable AI. But the other story is that AI is also enabling the chip design world in many ways.
So automation is no longer a cost imperative, it's a customer service imperative. And for service providers and technology companies, the more we can humanize it, the more we can remove hyperbolic sort of jargon.
The cloud is great. It solves a lot of real-world problems, but it's not just one cloud anymore. Public clouds, private clouds, edge clouds. The average business uses 5 different cloud providers. It's become chaotic and complex, with unpredictable costs, inconsistent security, multiple management tools, and different formats for workloads that span cloud platforms and providers. But it doesn't have to be that way. The Dell Technologies Cloud, powered by VMware, can be the one constant across your clouds. It brings consistent infrastructure and operations to your multi-cloud environment, so you can choose the right cloud for each application. A public cloud that lets you easily tap into services, a private cloud that's fully under your control, or the edge with cloud as a service. With a true hybrid cloud experience, your business becomes more agile with simple workload migration and easy onboarding for new assets. Your teams get to market faster. With simplified operations and automated processes, you reduce risk and strengthen your security profile. And with Dell Technologies Cloud, you have flexible consumption options, reducing your total cost of ownership. Like it or not, the business world often requires many clouds. Now, that's easier than ever, with consistent infrastructure, operations, and services across all your clouds. You get the cloud without the chaos. The Dell Technologies Cloud.
Our next panel is Enterprise AI, the Good, the Bad, and the Exponential. The panel has a great set of speakers who are experts in their industries. It is my pleasure to introduce the moderator of this session, Dr. Ingrid Valicio-Feltes. Ingrid is a doctor and an MBA. She is a healthcare executive, futurist, and globalist who has extensive experience in healthcare industry as a founder, executive, consultant, and a speaker. She is highly dedicated to digital and health ethics advocacy. She is passionate faculty member and entrepreneurship ecosystem builder. She is currently serving as the Chief Quality and Innovation Officer at Mednext Healthcare Solutions, where she provides oversight for all quality and healthcare initiatives across the enterprise, such as blockchain, genomics, and precision medicine. Additionally, Dr. Ingrid is the ambassador for several non-for-profit organizations such as Women in AI, Blockchain in Healthcare Today, and League of Virtual Social Entrepreneurs. So without further ado, Dr. Ingrid.
Thank you for the kind introduction and for having me as a moderator. It is a pleasure to be joined by such a distinguished group of guest speakers that agree to share their insights about the opportunities, challenges, and future direction of enterprise AI globally. Please allow me to introduce each one of them, and then we will dive right into some of the discussion points we have prepared to share with all of our audience. First, I would like to introduce Anmol Madan, Chief Data Scientist from Livongo. Then Dr. Swati Jain, VP Decision Analytics at EXL. Sashi Obilisetti, Group Director for Research and Development from Synopsys. Amarnath Purohit, the NetApp Head of Enterprise Intelligence. And last but not least, Raja Dodala, Head of B2B Digital, FinTech Strategy and Development at TIAA. As you can see, we have a broad range of expertise in our panel, and I'm certain that everybody in our audience is looking forward to hear their opinions. I thought before we dive right into our more focused discussion points, it would be important to acknowledge the global impact of the pandemic on AI and specifically enterprise AI. And I thought it would be meaningful for our audience to hear each one of your thoughts about how the pandemic has impacted the C-suite in your perspective, and maybe if it had an impact on your daily roles. Maybe Anmol, we start with you, if you would be so kind. Great.
Yeah. Hi everyone, I'm Anmol. I'm the Chief Data Scientist over at Livongo. And for those of you who don't know, our mission at Livongo is to help people living with chronic conditions, such as diabetes, hypertension, weight management, and behavioral health, lead better lives. And so we provide complete programs that include hardware, strips, software services, clinical coaching, as well as telemedicine services, all tied together with machine learning, AI, and personalization at the core, as to our clients, which happen to be consumers and members such as yourself, as well as employers and large health plans and other partners. And for our industry, the last 6 months have been completely transformative, because all of healthcare, a majority of healthcare, has been forced to move into a virtual and online setting. So the importance of using sensors in the real world, the remote sensing, the importance of understanding the insights about an individual using that sensor data, and then connecting that to the appropriate clinical visits, which themselves have moved over to telemedicine or video or audio or other channels, it just completely transformed our entire industry across the board. So it's a huge shift for our business. And certainly you can see that in our commercial momentum and everything else, as you can see, we're a public company. And then I think for us as an organization, it's been perhaps less of a shift because we've had a really strong remote culture, remote culture that we've built from the ground up, given our presence not just in the Bay Area, but across the country, in Denver, Chicago, and other parts of the country. And so that's been a bit of an easier adaptation than, say, other companies that haven't had that culture built from the ground up. But really transformative for our industry and what it means for the future of applied health signals and AI as we describe it.
Thank you. Amarnath, would you like to go next?
Yeah, hi, this is Amarnath here. I'm with NetApp. And, if you look at the industry in terms of how, from a high-tech perspective and how this has changed, right? In terms of the COVID situation, we being the high-tech company, we have transformed ourselves from a digital transformation perspective, being able to enable us across enterprises. We have offices all across the globe. So it hasn't changed much in terms of enabling us to be more capable and able to transform our businesses across globe, working remotely as we all do. So yeah, I think that's great in terms of how we are transforming, as a company in this new world.
Thank you. Dr. Swati Jain, would you like to share your perspective, your experience? You're on mute. If you can quickly unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here today. And I work with EXL Analytics, which provides analytics, AI, and ML services to clients across multiple verticals. And it's a market leader in the field and has been rated as a leader by several analyst firms. And in terms of the impact, so I particularly look into the retail and banking vertical. So I've seen that we've seen more demand for digital transformation that has been coming to us from the clients. And also we had to look at all the existing AI/ML models that we had to build for the clients to see the impact of COVID and also create new demand forecasting models. And some of them have come to be very accurate till the granular level. And even in banking, we supported multiple Fortune 500 clients of ours in the stimulus package and also in related to fraud models, etc. So I think overall, initially in retail, we saw some, but now everything is coming back to shape.
Thank you. Sashi, your turn.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Ingrid. I think in terms of the impact, as a computationally intensive company, we have not seen as much of an impact. But let me kind of look at it from a different perspective. Our customers are perhaps moving to the cloud more here, and we tend to see the same type of requests. In fact, Synopsys had a record quarter. So this was what we call a COVID quarter, so it was pretty good. So the impact is very minimal. From an R&D perspective, which is my area of expertise, we have been tracking productivity of our R&D teams, and we look at the same number of code check-ins or whatnot, releases, and they have all been on track. And in fact, given that probably most companies here and our company, we are global, we actually see that this has sort of leveled the interaction field where everyone is sort of virtual and everybody feels that they're interacting and contributing at the same level. We've had to make some adjustments for folks who are joining the company during this difficult time, and we are learning. So I feel there is some impact there. But all in all, from a customer perspective, there's really, in fact, we are doing very well. From internally, we are able to support our customers very well.
Great. And last but not least, Raja, would you like to share your thoughts too?
Thanks, Ingrid, for moderating and Minnie for the invite. So it's interesting as you all are talking about how COVID impacted your companies. So TIAA, for those of you that are not aware, we are a 100-year-old financial institution, about $1.2 trillion in assets. We're primarily in the business of managing retirement assets and retirement plans for most of the higher ed and a chunk of the healthcare giants. 16,000 or so institutions and 6 million or so customers, and we manage their money. And we're also a top 15 global asset manager. So let me take you back to April, when COVID was sort of, getting going. And, what we were dealing with is sort of multi-pronged challenges. One, higher ed institutions, universities, and, hospitals, they're trying to deal with this sort of new threat. And then at the same time, we're trying to make decisions on how to send 20,000 of our own employees, including call centers where we had licensed associates with FINRA, to work from home. So we had to sort of figure all that out. And the first thing that sort of hit us was our mail rooms across the country that receive requests and paper for really critical transactions that got hit with COVID infections, and we couldn't get your paper. So it's digital transformation and automation that we had to really get religion really quick. It's kind of very similar challenge. And then regulation, there was CARES Act and other regulation that we had to respond to very quickly. So I'm happy to say that I think we came out of it with a lot of confidence, and we really did well. And this sort of people on this panel, we've been preaching automation and digital transformation for a long time, and the excuses were, I know this process is too complex, and we need people, et cetera, et cetera. And then when COVID hit, we couldn't use those excuses anymore. And the Supreme Court is conducting business online. So even though it was challenging, I think it was a silver lining is that automation is no longer a luxury. It's no longer an academic pursuit. It's sort of a, you have to do it. So that's sort of where I sit today.
Thank you. I think that was a really great complex view. I think it also overlaps with some of the major surveys we've seen put out by international organizations such as the World Bank and World Economic Forum, OECD, the major consulting firms that show that definitely AI now is at the top of the agenda for a lot of C-suites. I think we still see some of the opportunities and challenges similar to pre-COVID, but there has been a shift in the percentage and in the prioritization of these. So I thought for the next round, maybe each one of you could share what you consider the major opportunity. And it can be something that you've personally worked on within your company or what you consider a major opportunity globally. Either one would be great for our audience to hear. So let's start from round one. Anmol, can you start again? Around? Thank you.
Yeah, happy to. So as I mentioned, I think healthcare is going through a massive transformation, and we really believe. So we have, the phrase we're using internally is sort of consumer-centered virtual care. And what has happened is what would have been a 3-year, 5-year, perhaps a decade-long transformation of a healthcare system that was very entrenched in face-to-face interactions and the traditional models of delivering care has been accelerated. And in 6 months, we've covered, maybe 5 years of innovation momentum. And so what does consumer-centered virtual care mean, right? It's this idea that I, as a consumer, am at the center of the healthcare system, whether it's chronic condition management, so chronic conditions being diabetes, heart disease, some of those that I mentioned earlier, that represent about 90% of the spend in the healthcare system, or my primary care, which is as simple as getting a telemedicine visit so I can just get, the first order support. Like all of that's integrated on my terms, on the way I want to access care with me as a center. And these various institutions moving online sort of converges that shift. So that idea of consumer-centered virtual care is a massive transformation we're seeing. And what is core of that is actually personalization and AI. Right. So if you have all of these healthcare resources together, the systems can get really good at figuring out what's the right next step for Anmol. What kind of content does he need? How do support him with his medications? What should his clinician talk to him about? All of that, those signals can kind of move between different parts of the healthcare system in a way that was, previously impossible, right? But now is because of the transformation.
Absolutely. So I think, yes, you're concurring with some of the findings that within the life sciences industry, virtual care is one key player and one key opportunity. Amarnath, what has been if you had to pick the major opportunity, which one would it be?
Yeah, so I think, in the high-tech industry, what our focus is to enable the AI capabilities for our internal enterprises so that we are more savvy for our customers, right? So one of the key initiatives that I worked on to build that capability is conversational AI, right? In terms of how I can enable internal enterprises to basically collaborate effectively to get the answers what they need and when they need it, right? So that was a key outcome across line of business, enabling this as an enterprise across, a different line of business to make sure that they all are collaborating and giving the response to the customer when they need it, right? So that was a key initiatives as an enterprise in the AI space that I was able to implement, yeah.
Great, thank you. Swati, I think you're next.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the opportunities means being a part of the retail vertical I see is the overall digital transformation for retailers. So it's said that even means it's a very low percentage that was digitally savvy in terms of having the online capabilities. And now the companies are also coming forward, and there are a lot of AI/ML interventions that can be introduced to enhance the customer experience and enrich the journey of the customer. Means we've helped retailers from in the entire online retail journey, from homepage personalization and email customer management, multi-touch attributions and returns optimization, real-time offer recommendations. I think all of these things can be introduced, all of these interventions can be introduced, and this digital transformation is coming up, means for the online retail part, but even for brick and mortar retailers, means some of this, the whole data thing, putting together the data, means we've sort of created help of brick and mortar retailers earlier built a rich customer 360 comprising of over 4,000 variables at a single consumer level. So putting together offline as well as online attributes for the customer, and creating machine learning models to know more about the customer. So all of these things, I think all of this data transformation, digital transformation can be is a huge opportunity, which helps bring customer to the center stage and really give personalized interventions from a retail perspective, or even from a retail banking perspective, and totally sort of help reimagine the customer experience. So I see, at least in my part of operations, this has a huge opportunity.
Thank you. That's great. We had such a broad already perspective. Sashi, what has your major opportunity been, you think?
Where do I start? Right. It's been incredible. I think so. Synopsys is actually the the 15th largest software company, and our focus is in software to design chips and writing software to enable customers to write secure software. Right. So these are our two primary areas. So a lot of our focus has been in how do you write better software to design chips faster. So just to give you everyone a crash course, it generally takes about 9 months to design a chip, and it goes through many stages of software. And AI, we consider AI as foundational technology that can work throughout the whole process of designing chips, whether it is to improve the time to results or quality of results. And early on, we put together a multi-year strategy to bring AI into our various products. And we have a lot of engines out there that our customers are using successfully. In many cases, we have been able to improve the customer process of designing chips substantially. So I actually see this as just the start, right? We are at the knee of the S curve. So I feel that this will improve, and ultimately, there is the saying that hardware has helped AI, right? We all know that GPUs and these AI accelerators actually help enable AI. But the other story is that AI is also enabling the chip design world in many ways. And in fact, the acronym for chip design is Electronic Design Automation, EDA. So think of it as the other EDA, right? The exploratory data analysis. So I see that there has been substantial impact, and it's not any different. Like in every other industry, we see that there is a foundational impact of AI, and I see this only growing in the future.
I've always chosen to surround myself by great people who are very forward-thinking when it comes to gender issues and diversity. I think diversity is a key and central element of any environment. And I've never been in an environment where diversity doesn't lead to a better place. From a science perspective, we know that if you have greater diversity of microbes, for example, in your gut, that you're more likely to be healthy. And that's finding of diversity of microbes in your gut. If you think about the diversity of people in a working environment, it leads to a healthier environment and more innovation.
Thank you. Raja, any additional insights you can add?
Yeah, so I'd like start with this quote from, I think Lenin said this, where there's like the decades where nothing happens and there's weeks where decades happen. And I think that happened to Swati. You'd appreciate this. And, e-commerce penetration sort of doubled in, 8 weeks. And Anmol, telemedicine probably doubled in like 10 days. And what we see in our industry in financial services is McKinsey data that I saw said that 40% of total digital users of financial services are new in the last 3 months. So we've been for years begging users to engage with us digitally, and they finally have. Now the expectations are going to be super high, and automation is no longer a cost imperative. I think automation was looked at as a way to save costs, and that may be true. But I think the biggest opportunity is without automation, the definition of digital transformation is about to change, especially large companies like ours. When we say digital, people think of it as just sort of the website or a mobile app, sort of the front end interface. We were able to get away with that until now, and we can no longer get away with that. I think you can't provide great digital service without having automated middle and back offices tightly connected to your front end. So it sort of changes the nature of automation and the imperatives for automation.
Thank you. I really appreciate you guys sharing all these opportunities. I think we owe it to our audience to also talk about the challenges, because as we all know, we've mentioned that there has been a change, but there still are many challenges remaining. And I see some of the questions that we get through the chat are also asking us to address that. So maybe the next round, each one of you can share your major challenge, and then also acknowledging some of the global challenges, which have been trust, literacy in AI, the misconceptions about AI, and how can we convert increased interest into increased adoption. So let's start the other way around. Raja, maybe you start and we go the other way this time.
Yeah, so, I was thinking about that a little bit. So one of the things that I sort of, dislike about the discourse about AI is sort of hyperbole that we've all been guilty of. One of the good analysts that I follow, Benedict Evans, and the way he frames AI is, for example, in 1950s, we all assumed, not we, I wasn't alive, but none of us are alive, but it was assumed that there would be like a bunch of stick men walking with hammers on factory floors, or robots walking around your kitchen, trying to wash your dishes. Instead of that, we've gotten washing machines and dishwashers. So that is sort of a better way to sort of think about, automation and AI. There's so many tasks like that if we automated, that would really increase productivity of our current employees, 2-3x, and that would unlock so much potential across the world. I think the obstacle to that is, to sort of buying a dishwasher, use that metaphor, is the dishwasher union doesn't want the dishwasher. So to me, the compute and sort of the practical applications of machine learning and automation has been proven now. I think there's lots of scope, but it's really the political and moral imperative inside companies to really put that into practice is the obstacle, I think.
Thank you. Sashi?
So it's very true that there are challenges, and challenges differ for companies in their domains. I think that's very clear. Now, for a company like Synopsys, we've been there for like 30 plus years. I think we face a very, in some sense, a unique challenge. in the sense that we've been writing software forever, right? I mean, think about graph theory and all. I mean, they're based on the problems that we solve. So how do you bring a company like Synopsys up to AI? And I feel it's a multi-step process, right? First you have to engage your company, then you have to enable your company, and then you kind of go into execution mode. So there is need for engaging at the highest levels. You know, they have to be sponsors for AI technology to be put together. There has to be resourcing to enable a common infrastructure, for example. And the execution, you know, you may be looking at your engagement models, business models, and all that. So these three steps are essential, and these are challenges that are sort of uniform across companies, but the way you handle it is different for every domain. And I think that's what I would give the audience, that think of it as a phased approach where you engage, enable, execute, and of course, my most favorite step that I haven't talked about, then you start excelling. So I think that's the way I would look at it. It's no different than any other new technology. It just has to be thought through.
Absolutely, thank you. Swati?
Yeah. So I think some of the global challenges are infusing AI education in the enterprise ecosystem and change management. I think these remain global challenges. But personally, according to me, a big problem in AI is complexity. And most people take pride in using complex techniques, but in reality, we see that decision makers are often not comfortable with the black box algorithms, and there's a constant tussle between accuracy, explainability, transparency, interpretability. If the results of these models are in line with what they think or know, it's fine as deployment. And the research indicates that less than 20% of projects actually make it to production stage. So the production stage represents another level of complexity in terms of integrating multiple lines of business, company infrastructure, and security challenges, etc. So means I think, yeah, the key is that the AI projects have to think big from the start and take into account internal stakeholders as well as customers. So as an example, like I'll just take one example, quick 30 seconds. That we supported one of our clients implement 2 AI solutions, and both were equally good, but only one saw the light of the day. The reason was that it was more integrated with the internal workflows of the organization, and salespeople were able to clearly understand and articulate the solution to the client and also the outcome. So I think this complexity is a big challenge, and we all should work towards making AI simple while dealing with inherent complexity.
Thank you. Amarnath?
Yes, I would say one of the key challenge in terms of the AI is basically the adoption, right? We have seen that there are so many different tools available in the marketplace. You know, we put the right business case. We actually work with business, identifying, you know, what the KPIs would be. And by the time we implement, the technology changes. So the challenge is you implement it, you know, there's a new technology that is coming up in every 6 months. And then when you adopt it, you know, your business process changes, right? So there are key challenges in every step, even if you're doing the right thing in terms of implementing the processes, but then how do you adopt it to make sure that it is accessible for each line of business? You know, we have seen that the adoption is low, you know, it won't be successful, right? So your adoption strategies is really important in the AI space, and how easy you want to make it in terms of the business process that you're defining to enable the AI is very key, right?
Great. Anmol?
Yeah, so first I like the challenge framing, because the companies that figure out those challenges actually have really deep competitive advantages, right? And so that's when you sort of really are excelling in the industry. And I think for us, what I think is our competitive advantage, and something we take very seriously, but it's a challenge in our industry in general, is in healthcare, we're dealing with biological processes. And so today, if I'm helping a person manage their diabetes, and I kind of give them, you know, coaching that says, hey, eat this kind of food, we need to tie it down to clinical outcomes, economic ROI, cost savings, first year, second year, third year at a population level to really show that these technologies, machine learning technologies, are actually meeting the clinical bar, right? So that's a huge competitive advantage. And so if you design from the ground up, I'll give you an example. If we have algorithms today that are saying this person isn't perhaps on the right medication, or maybe they're not adherent to their medication, and we escalate that all the way through their clinical care, like we need to then come back and say this actually, improved outcomes long term. So thinking about these biological processes and kind of tying it back to clinical outcomes, economic ROI, is something very unique to healthcare. But I think, and it's a real challenge actually for companies that are good at, when you think of the large sort of FANG type companies, they're very good at technology, but have not been able to make it in healthcare. It's because they haven't invested in that sort of clinical thinking and the real-time data and thinking about how you integrate all those together using machine learning. And I think is one of our biggest competitive advantages when it comes to applying machine learning at Livongo.
Great. Believe it or not, we're coming to a close. We have 4 minutes left. Time flew. It's amazing. I'm sure our audience found everything highly interesting. In closing, I thought it would be great if each one of you can make a brief call to action, encouraging statement to C-suites worldwide as to what could we do better? What would you change or encourage people to change so that we can have exponential adoption of AI and have a more mindful, ethical, meaningful implementation of AI globally. So let's start with Anmol, and then we'll finish with Raja.
Tied to business impact. And otherwise, without business impact, without really knowing what, it's, your clients, your consumers, your members, your clinical outcomes, if you don't have clear business impact, it's just a shiny toy.
Thank you. Amarnath?
Yes, exactly. I think your business case is really important, and how do you implement your strategies to basically adopt to that is very key. So make sure, taking the entire automation continuum in the thought process, that is very key for success.
Thank you. Sashi?
So I completely want to echo what Anmol and Amarnath have said. You have to tie it to business impact. AI is not the end, it's a means to an end. So you have to figure out how you're going to scale. You have to stay the course. Companies need to invest in AI long enough to figure out how you can continue to make progress and hit that business impact. So it's really important to remember that AI is not the end, it's a means to an end.
Wonderful. Swati?
Yeah, so one advice I would like to give here is that AI is a very broad area. It's just not about technology alone. It has an interplay of data, domain, technology, and program management. So I'll encourage everyone to identify their own strength areas and contribute in the AI journey of their enterprises. I saw a question that being fearful about AI. So means I would just say that there's nothing to be fearful. Whatever is your strength area, I think AI is here today and here to stay. So just identify your strength area and contribute in the journey.
Wonderful. And Raja, you get the last opinion on this one.
Yeah, so I'll do it in a couple of different ways. One, for the C-suite, your customers are already there. They're demanding it. So automation is no longer a cost imperative, it's a customer service imperative. And for service providers and technology companies, the more we can humanize it, the more we can remove hyperbolic sort of jargon. It's better. I think, and three, we're about to start a wave of automation and algorithms, and some of our implicit biases and injustice, tends to sort of get into algorithms. So it's sort of a watch out for all of us.
Thank you. Well, I think this concludes our panel. I would like to thank all of you again for sharing your expertise, your opinions, and I would like to also add one personal statement that I think it's important to think about AI, even redefining the terminology to maybe augmented intelligence. And in terms of one more question that came in, the trends for the future, I think if we can think about it as exponential AI that transcends boundaries and silos and is being infused into the fabric of our society, I think we can achieve great things together. Thank you. That concludes our session. Thank you so much for attending. We appreciate the audience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.